very welcome wherever you are in the world, whether you're live here with us or watching the recording on catch up. You're really welcome, and thank you very much for being here. The links, just wanted to say, the links to the previous three webinars in this series have been shared as part of the registration for this event. So please, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch those, please do so. And there will be time at the end of the session for questions and answers. I'll chair that. So when we get nearer to the end of the session, just before the question and answer section, please do put your questions that you have for the speakers today in the chat function of Zoom. Okay. I'll introduce the three speakers. So we have three colleagues, as I've said, from the Oxford Character Project. So Luna Wang holds a DPhil in Sociology from the University of Oxford with a focus on demographic changes in contemporary Chinese society. She also holds an MSc in Sociology from Oxford, along with a BA in Law and Economics from Peking University. Luna has been working for the Oxford Character Project as a programme coordinator since 2014 and is now a research fellow leading the Character and Global Leadership Project with an aim to map character-based leadership research and leadership development in low and middle-income countries. So Luna, you're very welcome. Anjali Sarkar is a social innovation expert and international development practitioner with a special focus on women's economic empowerment through financial inclusion. Previously, Anjali worked at BRAC, one of the largest NGOs in the world, to bring digital financial services to 1 million women in Bangladesh. Anjali is a Senior Atlantic Fellow at the London School of Economics, and she is also a Global Shaper at the World Economic Forum and a New Voices Fellow at the Aspen Institute. Anjali holds an MBA from the Side Business School at the University of Oxford and an MSc in Inequalities and Social Sciences from the LSE. And then our first speaker today, who I'll hand over to in a moment, is Ed Brooks, who is the Executive Director of the Oxford Character Project. Ed's research lies at the intersection of virtue ethics, character, and leadership development. Ed heads the research and programmes of the Oxford Character Project and has designed and delivered character and leadership development programmes for universities and commercial organisations around the world. And as colleagues I'm sure are well aware, Ed has a number of publications that focus very squarely on character development, leadership in universities. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome the three speakers, and I'll hand over to you, Ed. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to you, Andrew. Thank you, Rachel, very much. Thank you to the Jubilee Centre for this wonderful webinar series and for the opportunity here to share some of our work at the Oxford Character Project. It is lovely to see you all, and it's lovely to see so many friends and colleagues. If there has been one feature of our work at the Oxford Character Project, and we're coming up to 10 years, we started in 2014, it's been partnership with so many of you. Michael Lamb here on the call was involved right at the beginning of the Oxford Character Project as we started in 2014. We have made some wonderful connections around the world, including at the University of Navarra, and it's lovely to see you, Rosalia and Emma, so many others of you as well. It's super to be here, and we've learned an incredible amount from you, and certainly an incredible amount from the work of the Jubilee Centre. And one of the projects we've been excited to be part of in recent years has indeed been working with Andrew and with Tom Harrison and James Arthur and Christensen to take the wonderful framework for character education in schools and produce a framework for character and flourishing in universities. But let's, if it's okay, I'll share my screen, and what we'd love to do is share something of what we're up to here at the Oxford Character Project by way of introduction to our work. I'll say something and give something of an overview. Anjali will speak about the programmes and the educational side of our work, which she leads, and Luna's leading a wonderful research project looking at character and global leadership, and particularly character and leadership development in universities with a focus on lower and middle income countries, and Luna will talk about that global perspective as well. Let me find the right button and I'll share our screen. I'm hoping you can see that okay. Thank you. So our work at the Oxford Character Project, as I mentioned, started 10 years ago in 2014, but it really goes back much further. And this conversation about students and flourishing has a particular importance now, and we're aware of the challenges that many students and many in this generation, this emerging generation, are facing when it comes to their own personal flourishing, make this really pertinent. But it's an old conversation. And here at Oxford, I guess we're really well aware of that. Indeed, in this wonderful history of Oxford, Lawrence Brockles talks about the way that Oxford education has developed over time. And if flourishing is constituted centrally by the development of character, this is what Oxford's education was certainly about. It was about the development and the holistic development of students. And this is a quote from Lawrence Brockles's History of Oxford, talking about the university and the aim of the university's educational system in the up until the latter part of the 19th century. And it's striking. The point of an undergraduate education wasn't to fill the heads of the young with practical and useful information. Rather, it should aim to form character in an education built around classics, classical logic, ethics, mathematics, and so on, helping students, creating citizens who could turn their hands to different aspects of life, who could flourish, whatever it was that they went on to do. Now, of course, so many things have moved on since those days, and through the 20th century, those aspects of what is useful and practical, they really came to the fore, and there were many benefits of that. But almost what was central previously, this aspect and focus on character and the preparation of students to flourish in all of life, that was somewhat left behind. I think we're feeling now the deficit of that part of the education. However, though, zooming up right up to the present, if that aspect of education, flourishing, and character was somewhat left behind as we turn to a practical and technological focus in higher education through the 20th century, it's still there in the key documents that all of our universities still publish, including on the front pages of their websites. This is our university's educational mission here at Oxford, where we talk about a commitment to personal education and the personal education of each student, which is intended to provide a quality of education and experience which equips students with values, skills, intellectual disciplines, enabling them to make a positive contribution to society. It still very much references what were those key aspects of the Oxford education up to the late 19th century, and references them there right front and center in Oxford's educational mission. Now, I wonder if you look at your own university's website, what's written there about developing students holistically, about helping them to become leaders and thinkers who contribute to society, about helping them to flourish, to thrive in different aspects of life. My guess is that you'll find that. In fact, I'm sure you will, because we've done some research into mission statements of universities, and these kinds of emphases are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And indeed, they fill out the key documents that underlie education, not just at the higher stage, but certainly in higher education as well. This is the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has a right to education, higher education as well. And this point too is relating to higher education, directed to the full development of human personality, strengthening respect of human rights and freedoms. It's brought up to, and the language is built on, in contemporary documents. This is the Sustainable Development Goals and SDG 4 and the Target 7 underneath that, which talks about education being cognitive and non-cognitive knowledge, skills, values, attitudes required by citizens to lead productive lives, make informed decisions, assume these roles locally and globally, facing and leading through global challenges. So these emphases are still there. They're there underlying the educational system in key documents. They're there in the policy documents of our own universities. And yet, perhaps what we see is something like this. A lot of emphasis on the competent still, but really not so much on this important focus on character and flourishing. The aim, the ambition, the aspiration is signaled somewhat, but we're finding it really hard to deliver on. there are some questions, and important questions for universities to ask, and many are, an increasing number, and it's really exciting to be part of you all to be together thinking about what it means in universities to wrestle with many of these questions and challenges. What does this kind of education mean to develop values and attitudes in universities to help students to flourish? How does it relate to the central parts of the academic curriculum? What does it mean in different and challenging global contexts? Surely not one size fits all, but what does it mean in your context and in different parts of the world? There's a paper that we wrote with Jorge Luis Velázquez from the University of Navarra, thinking about some of these questions and starting with the key documents from the UN, looking at universities' mission statements and thinking about how the aspiration there might be turned into action. That's certainly what we see ourselves doing here at the University of Oxford, moving from aspiration to action when it comes for education into character and flourishing. And there are these different aspects, three central aspects of our work. It's thoroughly research-based, and that's been the case from the very beginning. In 2014, the Templeton World Charity Foundation kindly invested in a research project. Michael Lamb was the first postdoctoral fellow, and research has been key from the very beginning. Research into the theory of virtue and how this could be translated into education and at the higher educational level. And it's been interdisciplinary from the very beginning, combining work in philosophy and virtue ethics, in psychology and moral psychology, where there's wonderful experimental literature, in politics, in education, in business, in other aspects, international development as well. What we sought to do is to push into some research into the theory of character, pedagogy for character development, how character can be taught in higher education in particular, and then build on that research with student programs that themselves could be research-based. Anjali will talk about some of these in a moment, but many different research student programs helping students to develop character with a key emphasis on leadership. So we've joined character and leadership very closely in our work, and that relates to the aspirational approach that we've taken. Leadership for many students today is the way they might describe the impact they want to have in the world. And we support students, helping them to think about who they need to be to do what they want to do. So we're thinking about this leadership perspective to focus outwards and into society. And the focus inside that is then on the character that students might need to develop to live flourishing lives themselves and to make a contribution beyond themselves, wherever they are in the world. And that's really the third aspect then of our work. So research that underlies programs, student programs, and increasingly that's gone beyond students to other groups as well now. But those with an emphasis then on the flourishing of individuals, personal flourishing, but also public and societal impact. So helping students to think about what their contribution will be, what's their purpose, their commitment to make a difference in the world. And we've been able to work wonderfully in collaboration with some different organizations from private, public sectors, supporting and connecting alumni who from here go and are from all around the world. And it's a wonderful privilege. So research, education, all with this aim to help students flourish and help them to lead in a way which increases the flourishing of others. What's our research been about? Well, quite a wide number, increasingly, of different research initiatives. We have an interdisciplinary group of researchers and working on leadership-related projects in the humanities and social sciences. We've been looking at character education in universities very centrally, but increasingly as well in other areas too. We've looked at character and responsible leadership in business, looking at finance, law, technology, with a focus on the UK and a large project supported by the John Templeton Foundation. We've thought about humanities and leadership, and in a project with Wake Forest University, have a book coming out soon, thinking about the way in which humanities are important for the understanding and cultivation of leadership in our time. We've thought about role models and role model education, personal and organizational purpose, and work on hope and optimism, and some scale development there as well with the Harvard Human Flourishing Project. A wide number of projects, also character and leadership in the global south, and a new project looking at character development in AI and working with the Capgemini Insight Lab, the global consultancy. The projects are many and varied, and there's more information on our website, but it's been wonderful, particularly to work with so many partners. And we've worked with lots of partners beyond the university, other universities, wonderfully, including the LSE, Wake Forest, Hong Kong, Harvard, the University of Navarra, in Spain as well, University Francisco de Vitoria, and many others, but also with public and private sector organizations as well, many businesses, and wonderful support of foundations, Legatum, Templeton World Charity Foundation, the John Templeton Foundation, and the Laidlaw Foundation as well, and working really closely with others who are keen to advance character in their organization or through it also. The research projects have been theoretical, and they've also been empirical, and often they've joined these two components together. But what are we talking about? I've rushed into this discussion of character and our work to develop character and to help students to flourish in their university lives and beyond, without spending any time yet defining what we're talking about. Well, here's a brief kind of character 101. What we've done is drawn on work in contemporary virtue ethics, and learned a great deal from colleagues such as Christian Miller, Nancy Snow, and many others who are working on character and virtues in the philosophical and psychological literatures, and we've sought to understand and apply that. But in this body of work, character refers to dispositions or habits that consistently shape the way a person thinks, feels, and acts. Character traits are consistent across situations and spheres of life, but aren't fixed, and that's really important. They can be developed. They can be positive, those are virtues, strengths or excellences of character, or negative, those are vices. And the aim of character development in universities is to support students to develop those virtues and mitigate against the vices. Character then can be cultivated, it can be corrupted. It's shaped in institutions by patterns of life, people around us, stories, spaces, experience, and so on. It involves choice and autonomy, and that's very important at the university level to strengthen students' own self-guided character development. And it's the central and constitutive part of human flourishing. Christian Christensen's excellent book on flourishing as the aim of education is a wonderful place to look, and thinking there about the relationship between character and flourishing, not the full aspect of flourishing, but a central and constitutive aspect of human flourishing. Character has different components. We're talking about a very holistic aspect of education here. There's a motivational component, the intellectual aspects of character, and then a skill-based component as well. So to develop character, we need to help students think about their motivations and aligning those to help them to think and gain some understanding of different contexts and situations, so they can act with intention and rationally, and help them then to develop the practices of character that can then help them to show up applying important character virtues in their own lives and across a whole range of different situations. And these character virtues, at the very least, can be divided into two sets, and there are many others as well. But fundamentally, Aristotle talks about two sets of virtues: moral virtues, which are excellences of life, which underpin social purpose and ethical action, and they order personal ambition to the good. And there we might think of courage, justice, toleration, generosity, humility, kindness, so many others as well. And then the intellectual virtues, character traits of excellent thinkers, which are virtues relating to the acquisition, maintenance, and sharing of knowledge. Now, clearly we can see both of these aspects are really important for students in education. Here we are in organizations, institutions, which are all about the intellect and ideas. And so intellectual virtues will be absolutely essential for students, for faculty, for all of us in university life. But moral virtues, of course, as well. They relate to the theoretical projects. How can you learn without curiosity and humility, without courage to take on difficult projects, without perseverance to keep going through them? But of course, we want our students to develop as citizens, as leaders, justice. So key as we help students to think about their contribution to the world. And as Nancy Snow puts it, developing character, developing virtues of character is when will be central to our and students' personal flourishing. This relates to leadership. This isn't exhaustive, but of course we can think about how virtues are important in all different aspects of life. As I said, our work joins together particularly character and leadership, helping students to think about the contribution they'll make through their lives and their organizations, communities, and society, and so on. And you could see how some of these different aspects of leadership will require the development and cultivation of some specific virtues. So in order to lead well, you need to be committed to advancing the good, and so the virtue of justice. Leaders need to be able to act calmly and moderately under pressure, and so self-control will be important. And virtues exist importantly at this mean between vices on either side, and we're helping students always to think about how they can cultivate this virtue which exists here and sustain it in this midpoint between vices, pulling away from, say, arrogance, but also self-deprecation to cultivate humility, which will be the kind of confidence that they need to make a contribution. And the key here is the development of practical wisdom, the art of deliberation and discernment that balances conflicting information, aims, values, and enables decisions and actions to advance the good. And there's a wonderful book by Barry Schwartz and Ken Sharp that we've drawn on since the very beginning to help students to think about practical wisdom and how they might develop it and its importance in their own lives and work. It's wonderful, particularly to see some universities taking up practical wisdom at an institutional level. And I know through the work of Tom Harrison as part of the senior committee at the University of Birmingham, the University of Birmingham have taken practical wisdom as one of the key aspects in their framework for graduate attributes. Really exciting to see. So that's the what, why cultivate virtue in the university? Well, it's good for students. It aligns with their aspirations, helps them to achieve and advance the public good. There's a personal benefit, it aligns with many deep commitments. It's part of their social development, helps them to be good citizens. It's important for their academic development, prepares them for professional life. So many more reasons we could think of as well. And we were privileged a few years ago to draw together some brilliant people from around the world to a conference here at Oxford on cultivating virtue in the universities. And this book that came out of that conference includes a chapter outlining these thoughts on why cultivate virtue in the university, but many other lovely chapters as well by leading thinkers on in character development in universities from across different academic backgrounds. Why now? And this is important too. If it's important always to cultivate virtues in universities, there's certainly challenges that we face at the moment. I'm going to keep moving because I want to hand on to Anjali very soon. And just to think then about the how. How could we cultivate virtue in universities? And here I think it's really important that we recognize where we are in our locatedness. I'm not sure if you can see the slide, but it reflects the number of universities worldwide and shows the balance of universities, with the bulk of them, by far the largest number of universities. And there are perhaps 30,000 around the world. It's hard to know the total number, estimates vary, but the largest number are in India. Indonesia are in second, of course, lots in the US, but China, here we are in the UK, well down with only 330 institutions. And I think we need to keep understanding, of course, there are going to be differences in all of these different parts of the world. Where are we thinking? There'll be sociocultural variables, history, culture, tradition, which need to be taken into account. Different institutional variables, history, size, location, focus, strategy, funding, which will determine what is important to do and what's important to do next. And there'll be different role variables. Who's asking the question? Is it faculty, staff, students? Whose character are we seeking to develop? That will be important as well. And character development flourishing across these groups is essential. And then individual variables per student, identity, motivation, experience. All to say there's no blueprint. Perhaps different virtues will be needed to be emphasized in different places, and there'll be different educational approaches. Our work here is focused on guiding principles that to develop character in universities should be aspirational rather than remedial. So working with the grain of student ambition, supporting that and developing that. It should be relational rather than transactional. Of course, the development of character, it can't be simply passed across on a worksheet or in a lecture, but develops and depends on character being modeled on education, impacting students at a personal level, enabling them to reflect on deeper questions of motivation, meaning, and purpose. That it should be dialogical, and not didactic, not telling students what to do or who to be, but inviting them into conversation and helping them to think these things through for themselves. And then transformative, not one part of the curriculum, only in addition to a crowded space, but transformative right across it. And as part of this work, we've developed, as well as some key principles then, some pedagogical strategies. And this was work that Michael led on in the early days of the Oxford Character Project, and has been published now in a couple of articles, thinking about pedagogical strategies that can then support character development right across universities, and which can be integrated and implemented in a whole range of different programs. And some wonderful work has been done doing that in creative ways in different programs. Certainly we've done some here at Oxford, many others in many university contexts as well. And these are aspects or strategies which really arise out of the nature of virtues. So virtues are habits, and so they're developed, habituated through practice, not just thought of, but acted. We become what we repeatedly do, an insight from Aristotle. Reflection on experience. Virtues involve the development of phronesis, of practical wisdom, and rely then on reflection in order to be guided rationally towards the good, and not simply on unthinking action. Engagement with virtues exemplars, because virtues are personal and not simply conceptual, but also dialogue to increase virtue literacy, because virtues are concepts and so need to be considered, discussed, thought through. Awareness of situational variables, because virtues are always developed in context. Moral reminders, because virtues need to be constantly and continually developed. And then friendships, because they're developed collectively and together. I think Michael shared some of this in the Wake Forest presentation, but very happy to say more in the questions if that's useful. I'm going to hand over to Anjali at this point to talk about the programs side of things.
Thanks, Ed. That was really helpful to set the context and offer an overview of the whole program that we are trying to do here. Here's a question that we ask ourselves pretty much every day. And it's not really an Oxford-specific question. You can just replace the word Oxford and put your university's name or your institution's name. Of course, we are producing leaders, and they are not just the celebrity leaders we will see on the newspaper. They are leading different things, everywhere, all around the world. But are we really producing wise thinkers and good leaders? So we have taken up that as our mission in our work with students and young professionals and young people in general all over the world. I'm just going to give you a brief description of our 3 different programs. We run quite a few, but these 3 are currently our largest programs. So moving on to the first one, this is our flagship program that we started in 2014. And when I talk about this program, it really brings me a lot of gratitude because I was part of this program as a student in 2019. So this is an extracurricular program that we offer to postgraduate students here in Oxford. The number of students varies every year, but right now we have around over 200 alumni all over the world, and some of them are currently studying in Oxford. So here's a program where we meet weekly and we talk about a specific topic that has a virtue at its core. And it's wonderful to see how through all the 7 strategies that you have just seen from its slides, how we can bring this together through a dialogue and encourage conversations where people can share experiences and they can understand each other better. They can cultivate all of these virtues and more through these different dialogues that they engage in. And obviously it has leadership at the title, but at the core, it's about character. And we don't just offer workshops or different reading sessions. We also engage them with guest speakers and one-to-one support from our team. We take them to retreats outside Oxford. So overall, we try our best to create a flourishing environment where this type of character formation can happen. And it has been a joy to be involved in this program as a student and now leading this program as part of the team. Then moving on to our next program, which we offer to not just students. So here we offer this program to postgraduate students and young professionals around the world. This program has also character in its core, but here we are also looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. So as you can imagine, everywhere around the world, young people care about all these pressing social problems that we see around us. They care about climate change, they care about inequality, they care about gender equality, and all of those things. However, they sometimes feel they are too small to make an impact. They are powerless, or these are big, grand challenges that they cannot do anything about. So this program really brings together the big social picture and connects that to the inner work that we need to do if we want to work on our character. So here, our mission is to empower a generation of responsible leaders, people who can lead with character. And this program starts with an online conference. It's an annual program we offer. It starts with a 5-day conference where we, every year, it's an open program. We get more than a few thousand applications every year from all around the world. And then we select 100 young people from there. And then we engage them in dialogue with senior leaders from academia, public, private sector, political leaders, to engage them in conversations around the sustainable development goals, but also about leadership in general, all the ups and downs, highs and lows on leadership, and about character. And after the program, as you can see, it's an online program, so it's always challenging to engage a group of people in such a short duration of this program. But we offer them post GLC support, and that happens in 2 tracks. We offer them leadership development support for 6 months, and if someone has a very potential, high potential, promising project that they want to work on, we also offer them venture development support. We do this in partnership with St. Gallen Symposium, based at the University of St. Gallen, Switzerland. So it has been a joy, and honestly, working with this program, it really gives us a lot of hope, just to see how people living in very different contexts, living in Bangladesh, Morocco, Fiji, not just people in the global north, but also people around the world, how they can take up these lessons of character and interpret that in their own context, bring different cultural elements, bring different stories, different experiences, and make it something that they are willing to move forward. They are willing to take up and do it every day. So it is, again, character at its core. On top of it, it's leadership, but it has a different flavor altogether. And we learn a lot from all the students every single time we do it. Then I have another example of a different program, which I will say this is our most challenging program, simply because here we are working with youngsters. So they are 18, 19-year-olds. They are undergrads in their first or second year. And all the universities that we are working with, we have 17 universities in total under this program. So here we offer them virtual workshops, 6 workshops in a year. And you can see the topics here. We talk about purpose, growth, love, integrity, practical wisdom, and bringing everything together, how to take this forward in their life. This is sponsored by the Laidlaw Foundation. And here, it's a very interesting challenge, because for them, I think a lot of the students, they do not have traditional leadership experience, but they are living their life. They see different problems. They want to develop themselves. They want to do good and make an impact out there in the world. So for us, it has been a wonderful and enriching experience to translate our content, our character work for different audience. Here, one interesting thing that we are trying with them is to offer them monthly challenges. So here, I have just shared an example of a challenge. So we are asking them to develop a growth mindset. So we offer them different options. We talk about it, but the monthly workshop does not really constitute the main part of the program. It's really what happens in between 2 workshops. So we offer 1 workshop every month, and after that, we offer them this challenge: practice it. It just talked about the 7 strategies, and the first one is habituation through practice. So they practice for a month, and then they submit what they have done, what they have tried, experimented with, and failed, sometimes. But they submit their work with us, and then we follow up on that and take up, feature some of the scholars who have done exceptional work in the next session. So there's a feedback loop. They are trying different things. They are trying to cultivate all of these virtues and coming back to us with different results. So it has been a joy to see how different programs work out in different cultures, in different contexts, in different for different target audiences. And overall, if I can just talk about what is the one pattern that we see across all our programs. That will be in the beginning, when we start working with any target audience, they look at these specific virtues and they try to, quote unquote, cultivate character. At the end of the program, and more often than not, long after the program has ended, after a few months or sometimes even after years, character cultivates them. It becomes a part of their life. It becomes how they look at things, how they solve problems, how they make their career choices, different decisions, big or small or in between. So it's quite interesting, and this call is full of people who are grappling with, I'm sure, similar challenges. They are dealing with similar problems in different situations. So in the question answer, I would definitely love to see what people think, what resonates with them, or to just respond anything that you may want to know from our experience. I think that's it from my side, Ed. Probably over to you, Luna.
Great. Thank you so much, Anjali, for introducing our exciting programs. And hi, everyone. It's such a privilege to be here to share with you the work we're doing to understand and to develop character and leadership in universities around the globe. So in the next 10 minutes or so, I will briefly talk about 3 projects: a global survey on character and global leadership last year, an online course called Leading with Character, and a peek into our upcoming research on character-based leadership developments in global universities. So let's start with our global survey. So last year, we teamed up with a fantastic group of researchers from 8 countries to dive into how character-based leadership is being developed and researched, especially in the 137 low and middle income countries. And the project was generously funded by the Templeton World Charity Foundation. We identified 1,071 academic papers and 99 leadership development programs that focus on character-based leadership globally. It's encouraging that we found that university has increasingly been recognized as an important place for character cultivation among future leaders. 11% of these 99 programs are specifically designed for university students. So for example, Morningside Scholars program in Zhejiang University in China is a cohort-based 30 students from diverse backgrounds are selected to take part in an intensive 2-year extracurricular program. And Calfee Lead is a 4-year leadership program for female high school and university students in the Philippines. Leap Africa was founded in 2002 on the premise that Africa's transformation rests on young, dynamic, innovative, and ethical leaders. It has a youth leadership development program for university students. And Transformation Paraguay in Latin America has a program called I Lead for school and college students. They have had an impact on 300,000 young people so far. However, while there's a lot of good stuff happening, we also noticed some gaps. Intentional and systematic development of leader character is pretty rare, and a lot of program leaders actually feel very isolated. During one of our chats, a leader even asked me that, how did you even find me? Exchange of ideas is rare, which is a shame because many of these programs have amazing curriculum and effective strategies developing character in their own context. And we also found that online platforms are a surprisingly effective and budget-friendly way to reach a wider audience, especially in parts of the world that could really use the support. So moving on to our second project, the Leading with Character online course. So this course is the result of a collaboration between the Oxford Character Project, the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard University, and an international team of leadership development experts from 9 countries with funding from the Legatum Foundation. It is completely free and available to a global audience. It has 4 key modules: purpose, courage, love, and hope, and each integrating insights from research and practice with practical activities to encourage habit formation. The course is structured to provide about 2 to 3 hours of interactive online content, followed by 5 days of practical exercise for each module. It takes, in total, about 30 days to complete. It can be taken in a self-guided way or used to resource small groups in facilitated context. We're about to pilot this course with a diverse group of current and emerging leaders, actually starting from next week, and will be officially launched around this summer. And the last thing I want to talk about is about our upcoming project. It builds on the 2 projects I just mentioned aims to advance character-based leadership development among university students in low and middle-income countries. This project is also funded by the Templeton World Charity Foundation, and based on the findings from the Character and Global Leadership Survey I just talked about, we believe that 3 elements are central to advancing character-based leadership globally: relationships, resources, and research. So that has guided our 3 directions of this project: network development, content development, and research. And network development, we plan to build a network of researchers, leadership development practitioners, and potential founders who are focused on character-based leadership development in universities in low and middle income countries through a series of online events to facilitate ideas exchange and also the creation of an online repository of resources. And the second aspect, content development, we will interview key researchers and practitioners to gather global case studies and narrative profiles. And the aim is to describe the different contextualized way of leadership character development among university students in various cultural contexts. We will also develop a facilitator's guide for the Leading with Character online course to be used in university settings globally as well. And the third aspect, research, we plan to assess the effectiveness of the Leading with Character online course that I mentioned through both quantitative and qualitative data collected from universities across Asian, African, and Latin American universities. So this new project hopes to contribute to a better understanding of how leader character is being developed in universities globally, an effective online course for university students taken individually or in group settings, and also an active network of researchers and practitioners sharing knowledge and best practices. So more to share when we finish the project next year. So this is a brief overview of the 3 projects, and I will hand over back to Ed, and I think we would really welcome your questions and comments as well. Thank you.
Well, it's a thank you from me as well. More on our website, so you can find some resources and different news and things there, and so feel free to get in touch. We're easy to make, connect us, easy to find through the website or elsewhere. And a thanks again to the foundations that support us and make all our work possible. Andrew, back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Luna, Anjali, and Ed, for your fantastic presentations. So we do have time for some question and answers. So colleagues, please do feel free to put questions in the chat function, and I'll read them out to our speakers and allow them to answer them. So please do feel free to put them in. We'll start with a question from Cabrini, who asks, to what degree do you believe that university culture, a sense of community between faculty, staff, and students, fosters or indeed squelches the character formation of its students? So Ed, I'll start with you if you want to answer that and pass around colleagues. So over to you.
Thank you. Yes, so I think I mentioned how character is always developed in context, and it's important, I think, for universities to recognise that whether or not they've embraced intentional forms of character development, every institution, and certainly every educational institution, is already developing the character of those who live and work within it one way or another. And that goes for students, it goes for staff and faculty. I think all of us are shaped by our context. We explored this extensively in a project in the business world, thinking about the relationship between culture and character in development in businesses. And certainly the same applies in universities, where the environment, I think, can make all of the difference, and is something that we need to take really seriously when it comes to aspects then of organizational design, of the kinds of ways at a smaller level we might design our classes and the culture within them in order to help students to cultivate character. And here we might think about the ways in which we develop forms of dialogue with our students to help them take ownership of their own development of character and deepen their understanding, but also the dynamics of role modeling by faculty and staff, and how students will pick up and learn a lot from us, even without us saying anything about character at all. So I think, yes, this the culture of the university is a key part of what develops the character of students. It's not culture or individual character. These two things are always working together.
This is Cabrini. I just wanted to say thank you for your answer. And I just want to ask a really quick follow-up question. And that would be the presence of silos and a lot of isolation in the different schools and the disciplines. I'm working on a lot of interdisciplinary research, but I find that the siloing is also a problem with my students because they silo their learning and they compartmentalize it. And my class forces them to integrate their learning and hopefully try to approach the complex problems of the day polymathically rather than through a singular discipline. How do you suggest overcoming those challenges as we try to form the character of our students?
So it's hard. I think universities talk a lot about interdisciplinary work and challenges, but then the experience is heavily siloed. The feedback loop for academics exists within disciplinary structures, and for students as well. They're focused into their own specific degree programs. Here we've worked with extracurricular programs, which we've made interdisciplinary and had students from right across the different divisions of the university, and the students loved those experiences and the opportunity to engage deeply, to get to know students from other parts of the university. But it does take a kind of a high level of intention. Anjali, Luna, I don't know if you want to add anything in here.
Yeah, just a quick word here. Friendship could be a really good antidote to all those silos. So this is one of our 7 strategies. And I think if you can create the right environment where an astrophysicist student is sitting next to a lawyer and he is sitting next to an MBA student, the type of conversations which emerge out of that environment when people know, because we made it very clear that there's no marks for coming up with the most brilliant, most intelligent answer, because we are not looking for any. Everyone is equal. Every comment is valuable. Everyone matters. All the different, weird, beautiful answers that you are bringing with you, those are fantastic. So our job is to create that environment where different ideas can grow, different flowers can be together without feeling the pressure to be the smartest or be the best. And there, I feel that a lot of silos that we see in other formal settings, classrooms or otherwise, between departments, they disappear. And it really takes a lot of intention to cultivate that environment. But once you can cultivate that, people take it up on their own. Conversations don't go back to those rigid forms of, this is who I am and I'm better than you. So I think it definitely takes some work, but it's possible.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ed and Anjali, and thank you so much, Cabrini, for your question as well. And I just want to say that actually we look at a lot of successful programs around the world, and we found that a very common feature is that they try to bring students from different backgrounds and different disciplines, different cultural backgrounds, just kind of from various they really kind of variety of students come together, and they really appreciate these friendships that Anjali just talked about and the different perspectives they bring into the conversation, and that will combat the siloing that you just talked about as well. And I think we are shaped by the context, and we also shape the context as well. And I think to some extent, university is one of the best places to create such conversations and dialogues through student groups, extracurricular programs, or even student accommodations. I think that there's a lot of work to do, but I think there are great opportunities as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cabrini, and thank you for the answers. Now, notice Cyrus, for one, has just made a point about if the Oxford Character Project are interested in working with others, and has put some contact details. So what we'll do, colleagues, if you are interested, we'll capture the chat and we'll share them, obviously, with Ed and Anjali and Luna as well. So if anybody is interested in following up or working with the Oxford Character Project, please do let us know. But we'll move on with further questions. So one from Steve, who says that Steve is interested if a common worldview might emerge from your students who have been taught the how to flourish through character formation. Steve can imagine that global cultures would influence a character-focused worldview. So if I can invite you to respond to Steve's point, please.
Anjali, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, very happy to. So in one of our programs, Global Leadership Challenge, we actually use an algorithm to pair people who have very different worldviews. We give them a questionnaire, we ask some fairly controversial questions, and then we pair people who are pretty much opposite of each other. And then we engage them in a conversation where the whole point is, don't attack the other person. We are not talking about criticism. We are talking about curiosity. Try to understand where the other person is coming from. And in those environments, we have seen that, yes, people are pursuing different paths. The idea of what's success, what's good, what's right, these may look very different on the surface because people are coming with different stories. But ultimately, at the end of an hour-long conversation, our students discovered that they have a lot more in common, and they don't leave the conversation feeling bitter or feeling desperate to fight each other. They feel different at the end of the conversation. So I think, yes, we see a lot of differences and people come with a lot of differences, but the ultimate point is they have a lot more in common. No one will disagree that kindness matters, but there might be different ways to reach there.
Great, thank you. Now, another question, very sort of popular question that a few people have asked, and I can see Joshua has put a link in, thank you, Joshua, in the chat to the VIA, for example. Can you say something about the particular scales that you've used or have thought of using for measuring character, please?
Thank you. So how do we measure character? So it's more difficult in many ways than measuring for intellectual knowledge or assessing the development of a skill, but it's certainly possible. We just need to think about the methods appropriate to the theme and to the focus. We've used quantitative and qualitative methods. We've used various different psychometric scales, whether those on individual virtues, say purpose, where we've relied heavily on the work of Kendall Cotton-Bronk out of Bill Damon's lab at Stanford, or say humility, vocation, service, gratitude, others. We've also used the VIA in the past. We've used measures relating to leader, character. I think there are lots of measures that are out there. I think we haven't found a perfect measure, that's for sure. And are always seeking different and trying to learn from different approaches when it comes to assessing the character that's developed through programs. And so try very hard to always support quantitative measures with qualitative ones. Hearing from students, interviewing subsamples, making sure there are qualitative and open answer questions on surveys where there are quantitative and psychometric questions as well. We do so pre-post longitudinal studies around programs with control groups has been typical. We've run several of these now. More recently, we've also explored and experimented with experience sampling. And Corey Crossan, who's one of our research fellows, has an app-based approach to doing that, which is highly innovative and perhaps an exciting development. But there's a lot of work in this area. Luna's working on this right now because of the program the online program, and thinking about how we can start to measure development through that. So Luna, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I think you summarized it really well. I think for our project, will be a mix of quantitative and qualitative measurement as well. And longitudinal data is always preferred, but it's very costly as well. And we are experimenting and learning new ways to measure character in this field. So if you have any suggestions, comments, please leave comments and give us some insights as well.
Great, thank you. Well, we've got time for probably one last question. So if I can ask for the answer to be brief, although it's quite a big question. This comes from Joshua. And what do you think, in your experience or your reflections, led to the loss of character education in universities?
Thanks. So I could speak to that, and have done some research looking through the history of policy related to universities in the UK, and have thought a bit more widely as well. And it's I think the key thing here is to recognise that while there was something of a consensus there in late 19th century higher education, that consensus relied on the consensus, the wider, broader consensus of the day, which broke down then in the 20th century. So the development as character was tied up with that kind of late colonial Victorian worldview, which was challenged and then broken down after the First World War, and then replaced by a different world order which emerged through the 20th century, and an emphasis educationally on the urgent need to develop skills and knowledge in order to support economic growth and post-war recovery and kind of preparation defense against any future conflicts. So there was a breakdown of a consensus of which character development was part, and the new consensus that emerged didn't have time, perhaps, or place to think about the questions which were so important to the character, rushed ahead to develop technically, scientifically, economically, and so on. Now we face the challenge of not being able to naively adopt the previous consensus as a whole. So we can't turn back the clocks, nor do we want to late 19th century ideas around character. They were of their time. But I guess we need to think about what this means in our own time. The discourse on character is not limited to one era of history. It's timeless as human beings. We're thinking about what it means to develop personally and how we flourish, what our purpose is in the world. So these questions are always there, and it's our now important responsibility to think about how these are then a focus in educational settings where there isn't one tradition which everyone subscribes to. There are many, and there isn't one approach. There are lots of different ones, perhaps, but certainly the questions remain, and the urgency is there, and we're seeing that in the way in which, and perhaps we're seeing challenges to flourishing for students and also for whole organizations, institutions, and even society as a whole as well.
Thank you. That sort of brings us almost perfectly up to time. So I'd like to again thank Luna, Anjali, and Ed for their presentations. Thank you to all of you for being here for this session, and obviously to everybody who watches after the event through the recording. And just to remind you that the next in the series of webinars on the Flourishing Student scheduled for the 15th of May, and that will be colleagues and led by colleagues at the Ian O. Inatovich Institute for Leadership at the Ivy Business School. So thank you again for being here. I hope wherever you are, you have a good rest of your day or evening, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. So thank you very much. Thank you to the speakers again. Goodbye.